Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of My Car Shop, episode 7 in the 74 Dart Swinger. Today we're going to start hanging the quarter panel. Enjoy the show.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is My Cars Shop.
Okay, so the first step in the process is going to be to get the quarter panel hung in place. We got to do a little flanging back here. The flanging is already done up there, but we'll get it hung in place and start trimming it down to fit so that we can start tack welding it into place. Don't have a lot of time today, don't know how much we'll get done, but we're definitely going to make progress towards getting this quarter panel hung on the car and getting this side wrapped up so we can get going on the other side, because we want to get these quarter panels on here soon. So enjoy the show. So we're using a panel flanging tool, and it's just pneumatic. You see the jaws close like that, and so we put it in here. Off a little bit far back. Oops. I'm bending it in, so it won't much matter anyway. But we'll have to peen that in a little bit here. But we should be good to go. We'll have to do the same thing up there. We'll have to peen that a little bit. Okay, so now that we got it kind of rough cut, what he's doing is he's going down. We've measured exactly how far the flange is in from that door jamb, and he's just scribing it all the way down to the correct dimension so we know exactly where to cut it now. The reason we couldn't do that before was with the way that these quarter panels are made to fit over the existing, so they're kind of a cap panel, and we cut them down to fit in. So we had to cut that edge off first, get everything centered in place, and then measure down now that exact dimension of the original opening so that we know exactly where to cut it, so that that will fall right down inside of that lip. Once that's done, then we'll be able to do the same thing back here. We're also going to have to do a little bit of a cut and fit up here to blend this body line together so that we don't end up with that overlap looking really bad. Well, sometimes that doesn't work as well as that. Okay, a little trimming to do, but it's in the right area now. What do you think about that?
Just cut that piece off and it might be just about.
Okay, now we'll have to peen this in here just a little bit. You know what I mean? Just to get that to melt in a little better, but otherwise we'll be fine. So bend this down now and get that edge good. And then that line here, you know, will be nice and gradual. So a little crude looking right now, but actually quarter panel's back that way just a bit too far now. Look too far. Go up there. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we've got everything fitted, and it's looking good. So you can see the way we've done that there, and of course once this is done right, welded in here, blended in and so forth, peened over, it's going to look good. Come back down here. The back side, we'll be cutting that in and rolling this back edge in just a little bit. Also discovered that that marker light location, we knew it was the wrong light, but we're going to have to change that location. And also, we'll figure that out as we go, but that's going to do it for now. So stay tuned for part 2. Okay, so it's been a while since we actually did the first half of this episode, and you're going to see it all as one, but I thought I would do a reintroduction again. We're here with the 74 Swinger, and just getting ready to start hanging the quarter panel finally. Had about a week hiatus, a little more than a week hiatus here when we just had a bunch of stuff going on. Joe was gone on vacation, nephew graduation, some celebration for my family, in-laws, anniversary, work, you know, life happens. So we really try to get an episode out every week, and we're hoping to continue to do that. And this is just a little over that by the time you see this. But today we need to grind down the top of the quarter panel and make a couple little more patches, but all be well. That quarter panel is going to be welded, at least tack welded on this car before we're done with the episode today. So that's the goal. That's where we started this episode, and now that we're back at it, we're going to get that finished up. So I think Joe's going to join me here in a while. He's still working, but hopefully he'll be up here, and we'll get going. Okay, so I've got the quarter panel pretty much trimmed and ready to go on. So we'll have to stitch weld across the top. I have a little grinding to do on the new panel just to get the metal prepped. But the other thing I need to do is go through before we put it on there and drill some spot weld holes in the quarter panel underneath, through the lip that goes into the pinch weld on the bottom, down along the bottom back here, so that once the quarter panel is in place, we can weld through to the metal above and then fill those holes up, and it'll be like the factory pinch welds. Of course, they did it with machines that grabbed it and just went bzz, bzz, bzz. But we're going to kind of duplicate that. We're not really caring about making it look factory. That's not the point. That's really the only way you can get these back on there, is to have those spot weld holes if you don't have a spot welder. So you drill somewhere around a 1/4 inch hole, give or take, and maybe a little bit smaller than that. But we also have a punch tool that we can punch some, so I may use that. But get those holes punched or drilled in there, and then we'll be ready to install this panel. I don't think there's any other metal work that I need to do at this point in the substructure. There's one little piece down here in the corner I want to do once it's on the car, but I think everything else is pretty well ready to go. So I'm going to pull this back off of there. I'll probably just flip it up on the roof. The other thing you notice, we had a dent in here, and we pulled that back out and gotten it pretty close. I got a bunch of holes in there I got to weld up. But I'm not going to fix that and weld things up until the panel is fully on the car, because this panel is folded, as I think I'd mentioned in an earlier episode. It was an accident after I bought it, and rather than buying another one, being what this car is, I just pulled it out, dollied it out the best I could, and we'll get it hammered out the rest of the way once it's on the car and it has some strength to it, and then get those welded up. And just a real thin coat of tiger hair is going to take care of that. So, you know, if this was a valuable car, this car is going to be worth 10 or 15 grand when it's done, so it's not going to be a huge dollar car. If it was a much higher dollar car, like my GTS, we wouldn't mess with that. We would obviously put another quarter panel on and just throw this one up in the archive for another project later. But we're going to use what we have. We might as well use it up. We've had it for years, so that's what the deal is here. I know I mentioned it before, but if you haven't seen that episode, the quarter panel was actually against a car trailer, and I backed it up, forgetting it was leaning against it, and it buckled it, and just put a big fold right through it here like that. So we got most of it out of there. It's within less than 3/16 of an inch. I'll pull it a little bit more once it's on the car, and there's no oil canning in it anymore. I got all that out. I got it out up here real nicely, so we're close. Close enough now that we can mount it. So anyway, I'm going to flip it off of there, get some holes in it that we can get some spot welding done, so we'll get that done right now. So the tool that you saw us use for flanging the panel, it also has a punch right here, right there. So that's what we can use to punch holes in this. I don't think the compressor's pumped up enough yet to be able to do it, but let's see. You don't want to put your finger in there, that can hurt. Okay, yeah, I don't have quite enough air pressure yet, so actually not closing all the way. I wonder why. Yeah, maybe make an adjustment on this tool here. Not sure what's going on. It's not closing down all the way. Maybe just need some oil. Let's see what we can do with it. Okay, so for some reason the tool's not punching holes, but it worked good to make center punches on that bottom lip there, so that's fine. I'm going to use the old-fashioned center punch now to drill holes for the other one, and then we'll use these to drill also. You do every inch, inch and a half to 2 inches, I would say probably. So. Okay, so got the drill, and I drilled one drill bit was a little dull, so I just sharpened it. Hopefully this works better now. Much better. The drill wants to walk everywhere on me. Okay, let's get you over here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so you can see the 3 holes that I've drilled now. And so all I'm doing is just getting into my center punch marks here. tends to walk a little bit on me. Some of that's because this panel's flopping around here like an old fish out of water. A little further out than I wanted, but hopefully it'll work. Come on. Should be probably using a smaller drill first, but I'm not. One thing you want to be careful of is you don't drill into your finger. So let's get some more of these done. Okay, so part of what I just did was clamp everything down into place with the vice grips. And what I'm doing, if you can see the lines, I'm making sure that the lines in the door is on their right, and the lines in the quarter panel line up. So you can see that the door matches the top of the quarter panel almost perfectly. Everything's lined up good there. Now, you're going to see these body lines are not going to be perfect. But there's a trick to that, because we'll be putting, well, there's going to be some Bondo in here, obviously, because of this stuff to my left here. But also, when you put the primer on and you're blocking it out, you can actually move those body lines around a little bit, give or take 1/8 of an inch one way or the other, just by the way you block into them. And I'm sure we'll show you that eventually. But if you sand down this way, it'll move the body line down a little bit. If you sand up this way, it moves it up. And that's a little trick on how you get these body lines perfect. The other thing is that we're mentioning is the door gap. Let me go over there so you can see it. Sorry for shaking you around. Another reason that I seam these the way that I do is that door gap is factory perfect. And that's why I don't come into here when I put the quarter panel on. I do it back here, so I don't mess with that. 2 reasons. It doesn't move that. The second thing is I hate it when you lose this factory edge. Because this then will look like it hasn't had quarter panels on. Now, we're not trying to hide that we did it, but we want it to look factory. And so if you don't bring that around, and it just looks terrible. I've done them that way, and 20, 30 years ago, never liked them, and I figured this out, and it's kind of a proven way to do it. So at this point right now, this quarter panel's just got one tack, several pairs of vice grips. I just need to get back from the car, look at it, and make sure everything's lining up. We already did the body lines, but I want to be sure it's lining up this way too. We don't want that wheel opening to have some big wow in it that I'm not seeing. So I may get a few more tacks on it. I didn't even pull this outside and take a look at it, but probably not. I've done this enough that I'm going to be able to eye it up pretty good. So I think it's looking good. I don't see any big problems with it, but I just want to be assured of that before we move on. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is this may seem kind of counterintuitive or counterproductive, and I'm going to tack one back here, and then I will start at the front and start welding my way back, and I'll keep a close eye on this. I may have to cut this weld off once I get it further along, but the main reason for tacking it back here is so that it doesn't fall down as I'm moving along. The metal moves, you know, we've talked about that in other episodes, how metal is very much like clay and moves around. So as I'm coming down and spot welding this in, it's very possible that I'm going to end up with a bind and have to cut this so that I can get this to fit flat all the way down, because I'm going to be doing a lot of hammering and dollying to get this into place. But I really need to have this end exactly where it belongs, and the only way to really accomplish that for sure is just to put a little bead weld here. I'll tack that in place, and then as I'm coming along, I'll keep a close eye on it, and if I have to, I'll cut that weld off. But it's fitting good now. The lip of this is really tight up against the inner quarter for the most part. There's one spot here it's not. I'm not too worried about that. You know, we'll just keep pushing this in and peening it down as we come, and we'll end up with a nice seam up here when we're done. Something that, if you noticed in the time lapse that I did, I wasn't pounding direct, for this isn't a body hammer for one thing, but I wasn't pounding directly on this metal. I was using the slapper file. I slapped it down a little bit. Now you gotta be careful here by the window. We don't want to break this window. And but I was using the slapper file as kind of a flat piece of metal, and coming in here and just using that so that I don't end up with peen marks in that metal. I've done that in the past. I've made that mistake. So now everything is nice and tight. It's starting to buckle down, and I can put another weld in here, and then I'll really work on peening that down a little bit better. So my next weld is going to be right in here, so let's get that done. The other thing I wanted to mention is you'll notice when I'm spotting, I don't always put my helmet on. I've got my eyes closed, sometimes my face turned away. It's just for me a little easier to get it spotted, then pick the helmet up and make sure that I got good penetration on it. So it's just old school, I guess. It's just the way I do it. Goober stuck. Normally I have a pair of wire cutters here for this. You know, if I didn't have the camera going, this never would have happened. Well, doesn't happen very often. Okay, that was ridiculous. As soon as I turned the camera off and touched the trigger, it popped out. I swear, it's like a little child. It knows the camera's on, it's going to act up. That's better. Okay. Again, I'm just tacking a little bit here just to make sure everything's in place. So now that I have that like that, I'm not using a body hammer, but I'll get a body hammer and start peening that down in there as I'm going along and welding it every inch or so. Okay, so another thing that I hadn't done that I forgot about is putting a piece of cardboard up by the window. When you're welding this close, welder spatter will ruin the glass. And I don't know if I have an extra set of quarter glass for these cars or not, but I certainly don't want to replace it if I don't have to. So that's where we're at with that. Keep setting my body hammers down. I don't know where they are. But the next step here is I want to just tack this piece down in place just a little bit, and then we'll start working our way back. So far, I'm really happy with it. It's nice and tight. I'm happy with the way it's forming in. And as we go along and just form that down, it's going to make a very nice rounded edge in there and be a very nice quarter panel fit. So we may get a piece of round stock once I get a little bit further along. Right now we're coming up the hump here. Once we get over that hump, I may get a piece of round, like a round steel dolly that I have, and put in there just to help form that a little bit more like that. We'll play that by ear and see, but right now I want to get this tacked in place here. Looking good. You can hear that metal just creaking from the heat and things moving around. Okay, let's get this pushed down in place now. Good, excellent, very happy. And it's not crawling out yet on me, so we're good. The further I get along, then the easier that'll get. But right now, it's just getting it pressed down into place. Good. Most excellent. Very happy. It's tedious. Definitely takes a long time, but well worth the effort you put into it. And this part is particularly hard right in here. Well, once we get back past in this area, you got a lot more room to work. So getting this peen down into place and everything in here is a bit of a challenge, but we're getting there good. So. Okay, so So here's where we're at right now. What I mentioned earlier is I figured this was going to happen is as I'm going along, you would notice that I was coming along in here and this kept buckling out. So I went down here and I pushed this in place and tacked it, and everything's fine between here and here, and it's all good. But what's happening now, that's when I'm pushing here, it's buckling here. And that's because it's welded here. So I need to go back now and cut this weld off the back. We're close enough now into place that I don't need to be too concerned about things moving around too much. So I want to cut this off here and free this corner up a little bit so that I don't end up with this buckling in here. It's not that big a deal. If I had to, and I've done this before, you can pie slice this. But I just feel like the best scenario back here is, I think the reason it's doing it is because the metal's starting to bump up in the middle here because it's tacked back here. So I want to cut this off and then kind of let it just slide back a little bit, and that should stop this from buckling here now. So let's get that done. Okay, so again, this spot that I had tacked here was just to temporarily hold that in, so I've got to grind that out of there. That'll free this up now so I can get the rest of this moved in place. It's looking pretty good, and there's just a couple little spots down there that I just had to dolly a little bit. You might have seen me going back and working the edge in a little bit. It kind of bowled out. But for the most part, I'm really happy with the way it's looking, and it's going to fill in nicely, I believe. It's got a good, I may have to, like I said, I may have to do a little more dolly work, but overall, this is turning out really nice. So I do want to clarify something. This is the way I do things. This doesn't mean it's the way it should be done. I don't know how many quarter panels I've hung this way, but a lot. And I've always had good success. You've seen the cars around here that we've done. This one, 68 Dark, the 47 Ford wasn't this way, but the 69 Charger was similar to this. And there's been other ones I've done as well that you haven't seen, but I've had good success with it. And are there better ways to do it? Of course. But it's always in the context of what the car is. So if, as I mentioned before, if this was a high dollar Hemi 70 Challenger, we would be putting full quarters that go way up into the roof and doing things much differently, so you'd have none of these seams. But for a car like this, that's going to be a $10,000 or $15,000 car when it's done. It's just not worth it. I'm not even going to do this on the 70 Challenger. That's not a big dollar car. That'll be worth 30 or 40 grand when it's done, but it's going to be nothing special. It's just going to be a 446 pack clone car. So, you know, it's not a high dollar car. It's a 318 car. So it's always keeping in mind the context of what you're working on, the value of the car, and always turning out a good looking product. That's not the end of the day, but the price of doing this versus the price of doing a quarter panel that goes up into the roof and so forth is significantly less. So that's the reason for doing it this way. Okay, so you can see we got it tacked along there now. And it took me a bit longer than I was expecting, but that's okay. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of My Car Shop. Realized I forgot to do an epilogue on the show when we were still out in the shop, so I was actually just finishing putting this episode together tonight and realized it wasn't there, so here it is. Anyway, thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed this show. If you know other people that enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to spread the word. We'd like to get more people subscribed to the channel. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please make sure that you do subscribe and also hit the bell so you receive the notifications. That'll be somewhere on the screen. You're smart enough with YouTube, you can figure it out. But we really would like to get more people watching the show, and I'd also like to hear from you more of what you'd like to see. So be sure to post those questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. We'll catch you next time, and one more thing, just make sure, rock on.